Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. How's life? Thought I'd do a quick video about one of the big fights that's coming up at the weekend. We've got a few good ones actually this weekend, but the one that springs to mind is the I don't know what you'd call it. It's just a domestic dust-up, isn't it? Really, no real belts on the line or anything. But Chris Eubank Jr. against Liam Williams at middleweight. Now, I get the impression these two don't like each other. What do you think? You may have seen the Sky Sports gloves are off thing, which is always quite a tense affair. Sometimes it's kind of manufactured a little bit, like, maybe the dark lights or the lack of lights, the darkness, and the moody music, and it's all a bit constructed. But on this occasion, I did get the feeling that these two guys don't like each other. Why, I don't know. It supposedly goes back to some sort of sparring session, as these things so often do. Very sort of polar opposites, aren't they, in terms of personalities. Liam Williams, from the valleys, working class lad, tough guy, come up the hard way. Chris Eubank Jr., his old man was obviously British boxing legend. So it's the old silver spoon scenario versus the, school of hard knocks variety. And the reason I think this fight is so interesting to me is that I really can't pick a winner. The last fight that Williams had was against Demetrius Andrade, and he was really put in his place early on. Within 2 rounds, he was on the floor, wasn't he, in the second round? But even though Andrade jumped on him, stamped his authority on the fight, said, "You behave yourself," Andrade, as has been the case a few times in the past, kind of took his foot off the gas a bit. Maybe started to get a bit complacent. Maybe ran out of a few ideas. And Williams came back into it, which I thought was quite surprising, because Williams, there is a sort of knock against Williams that he's kind of a bit of a bully. And he's great on the front foot when he's beating people up who can't really match him in terms of skill or physical strength. But he actually hung tough against Andrade, and I thought looked quite impressive mentally, even though he clearly lost the fight. He managed to work his way back in, and he didn't capitulate, which is not really the sign of a true bully. It wasn't like the Mike Tyson thing where he started off with the intimidating tactics and started off like a train coming out of the station, picked up speed and then slowed way down. No. The guy kind of worked his way back into the fight. I thought it was quite an impressive performance in some respects by Williams. I don't think it was as one of those fights where you lose, and you clearly lose, but you learn, and in a sense you prove yourself in some respects. And in his case, he proved that he can operate at world level. Now, bearing in mind that he had those 2 fights with Liam Smith and lost them both, and there was a sort of question mark in that first fight where he had a bad cut on the eyelid. It was a very bad cut, and there was a sort of quitter accusation thrown around at him. I think he kind of disproved that in the Andrade fight. He has looked much better at middleweight than he did at light middleweight. Now, contrast this with Chris Eubank Jr., who campaigned for a couple of years at super middleweight. But likewise, there's a couple of defeats on his record. Both these guys haven't been able to get over that hump when it comes to world level. They haven't been able to quite break into the top echelon, maybe even the top 10. Because early on in his career, as you probably know, he fought Billy Joe Saunders at middleweight, and I actually predicted that he would win that fight. I thought Saunders' lack of discipline would mean he came a cropper, and I thought Eubank would probably outpoint him, maybe even stop him late. But Eubank barely threw a punch for 6 rounds. Billy Joe won the fight, but he had to survive some awkward moments towards the end of the fight. So again, Eubank has a good engine, good jaw, but has proved himself over the distance. Moved up to super middleweight later on in his career. We'll ignore that debacle with the Golovkin fight. I don't know why he didn't take that. I suspect they didn't really think they could win that fight at that time, Eubank Sr. and Jr. But they moved up to super middleweight. The George Groves fight in the World Boxing Super Series, again, couldn't quite get over the hump, could he? George controlled him, but again, Eubank showed a good jaw, good engine, came on strong. I think George had a dislocated shoulder in the last round. Eubank put it on him. If you talk about other fights with Eubank, people mention James DeGale. DeGale looked, if not shot, then certainly greatly diminished by that point, and lost a very clear decision. Was on the floor twice. Eubank kind of toyed with him to some degree, and DeGale looked way past his best. A peak DeGale would have been a different proposition, but he looked like he'd had too many injuries, too many miles on the clock, and kind of had one foot in retirement. So Eubank kind of beat him up and won the fight. And DeGale said, if I can't beat this guy, I'm quitting. And he did. He walked off into the sunset with all his money, having been a world champion, having been an Olympic gold medalist, had a great career. And those are heights that Eubank Jr. has yet to scale, which is a little bit surprising because despite that early setback against Saunders, you did feel that if Eubank Jr. had the right trainer, and for years, of course, he was more or less self-trained, or Ronnie Davis helped out. His very eccentric father kept sticking his beak in, and he wasted a lot of years, Eubank Jr. So that brings us to the modern day, where he moved back down to middleweight. That he can still make the weight comfortably shows a great dedication to the sport. Again, it's the old line about the silver spoon. You can turn it into a gold one if you work hard. But he does have, fistically, he does have a lot of, I think, a lot of shortcomings. I don't think he hits particularly hard with one punch. Eubank Jr., I think he's got a great uppercut. I don't think he throws enough punches. I don't think his footwork is that great. His father's footwork was his weakness as well. His father's footwork, you know. So I see a lot of flaws in Eubank Jr., but he does have considerable physical strength, good individual punch selection. His combinations aren't great. He kind of, there's long periods of inactivity, and then he'll go forward and throw lots and lots of punches, and kind of rely on his jaw to get him out of trouble if he's ever countered. But there's never really seemed to be much fluidity over the distance. It's all very stop-start with Eubank Jr. That's throughout his whole career. He's teamed up with Roy Jones Jr. over the last couple of years. I'm not convinced about that pairing. Jones Jr. doesn't have much of a pedigree as a trainer. That's not to say he can't be a good trainer. He's just not proven. And his style compared to Eubank Jr.'s, I mean, it's night and day. They're just chalk and cheese. They are just polar opposites. And the last couple of fights, the one with Marcus Morrison, and before that you had I can't remember the guy's name, the guy who quit. I didn't really see many improvements in Eubank. I think, if anything, his style seemed to have regressed because it seemed to confuse him. Am I going forward? Am I throwing punches? Am I using my physical strength? Am I trying to box? I didn't really see much improvement, to be honest with you. Now, Williams previously was with Dominic Ingle. He had that real, a good purple patch at domestic and European level. Was the first one to stop Atlantis Fox, who previously had, lost a world title shot on points. That was a good win. Back down at domestic level. Defend his British title in spectacular style, but again, when the world title shot came, didn't quite work out. Demetrius Andrade is a hell of a fighter, though. Let's give him props there. Now he's with Adam Booth, and again, I'm not sure the style of the trainer, the style of that particular trainer suits the natural style of this particular fighter. I'm not convinced at all. So I don't know. This is what's making this fight so difficult to predict. But I'm making a video, so I suppose I better make a prediction. I'm going to go with Chris Eubank Jr. coming from behind. Maybe he's behind after 6 rounds, 7 rounds. Putting the heat on Liam Williams and stopping him in 11 rounds. Stopping him on his feet. I don't think he'll knock him flat out. I think the ref might jump in or the corner might throw the towel in. I don't know. The thing about Adam Booth is, as we saw with the Josh Kelly fight, when he got stopped by Avanesyan, Adam Booth, he'll throw the towel in if his fighter's taking a beating. And I get the feeling that Eubank, because he's way too economic with his punches, he'll be trying to be too precise. He'll be losing rounds to inactivity. Liam Williams will kind of box fight, be a lot busier, whacking the jab, but also fire the combinations. I don't think he'll be able to hurt Eubank considerably. But I think as time goes on, Williams' fuel tank will lower. And by about the 8th round, he'll be really feeling the pace with a third of the fight to go. And Eubank Jr. will step on the pedal to the metal, start throwing the punches, start unloading more, and will stop Williams in 11 rounds, I would say. So that's my prediction for what it's worth. It's not a fight I can predict with any great confidence, but I'll go with that. 11th round TKO for Eubank. What do you think? Are you looking forward to the fight? What's your prediction? Leave all your comments below. I'm always interested to see what you think. And thanks for tuning in, obviously. Appreciate you watching the video. If you are new to the channel and you could subscribe, hit that subscribe button. It's always appreciated. Want to build the channel up a little bit. Yeah, we got some good fights on this weekend, so I'll probably do another video or two about some others. But what are your opinions on this fight? Let me know. Leave your comments below. Thanks for your time as always, and as always, take care.